Are you ready, Anthony? We got to get started. The fire
Yeah,
board will be
it's
here
time
at
to
4.
start the meeting. If we can't include her, we can't do it. And we just gotta go.
You get her back up and go into your settings and turn her volume up. All right, so the first item, or the only item on this special meeting first is public comment. Stacy, she'll be talking during the item, so I don't think you have anything additional beyond that. Okay. So as the council is aware, the work plan and 2022 Earth Day event was approved with a budget of 5,000. This included an Athertonian special edition, which is to the postage people now and should be hitting mailboxes as soon as they can get it out there. We estimated that at about $2,000, and that was based on our normal Athertonian, which is much smaller in print size. And it would also include the event would include various vendors, social media, speakers, rentals, food, kids activities, music, and volunteers. But since that initial work plan and approval, the event has blossomed into a far larger event with all of the preceding plus EV displays, food trucks, art displays, pop-up bug museum, and more. But the issue is the special edition Athertonian was estimated at 2,000 based on our original normal 10-page Athertonian format. However, the special edition required some specialty printing and ended up being twice the size and numbers of pages. And that meant it was also twice the cost. So this additional 2,025 basically busted the budget for the event. While the event is now barely within budget, I believe to get there, there's
twice as much.
Yeah.
So $5,000.
the normal Athertonian is about $2,000 print and mailing, and this one was 4,000.
It is budget. Our estimate that we did not realize to include. So I think we were learning curve problems. We just didn't estimate correctly. We didn't actually go over it in time to make correct issue before they'd already printed it to
Yeah, if we had talked
make
direct-
changes.
Yeah, if we had talked directly to the printer, but see, part of it is the logistics of how the
Yeah.
system works. If Stacy had talked directly to the printer, we probably would have been able to cut back or at least made a decision, but we didn't know until,
It was
Yeah,
already
it's too
dropped
late.
off at the post office, so.
and that wrecked the budget for the event.
The good news is the Athertonian is really good. So I think it's going to be a really great resource for the town that we can be really proud of. So hopefully you guys will all be able to see it.
They have a copy in front of you right
Okay,
now.
and then this, I guess, didn't get handed out. So I have, these are slides, but
I think everybody has them. They already have them.
So I
Yeah,
just have-
Anthony's on top of it.
I just have a bunch of them. So what I did, because I also, since everyone's coming to Earth Day and doesn't know much about it, I have a bunch of slides to kind of walk us through what Earth Day will look like so that everyone's up to speed before the event. So I wanted to talk through it and then we can talk through budget. Hopefully we'll go fast. So the general overview, we have speakers, we have a green vendor fair, we have the art exhibit, we have an electric vehicle showcase, e-bike trials, food and music. And then if you want to slide through it, I basically just walk through the map. So the green vendor fair, the DJ, the food, and the EV showcase will take place in kind of the main front lawn area. And then I have a map here. This is the map. It's a map in progress. I wanted to see what our maximum limits were in terms of capacity. So this map is in scale, but has more tents and EVs than we will have at the show. But this is the layout roughly of what it'll be. So we have fire truck, we have food truck, we have a bunch of EVs, we have a bunch of tents, we have the leaf blower bowling happening in the middle of the lawn. So it's going to be a really, really good, really cool event. It's going to take over the whole front of the park. On the next page, you guys want to see, we have the list of all of the vendors that are participating in the Green Vendor Fair. And then we also have additional vendors that are in the bike and EV area. So you can see the whole list here. So we'll have about 26 to 30 different booths.
Low waste.
Low Waste is a sustainable company that's selling, they basically show you how to buy in bulk and not use plastic.
Yeah, they also sell like, they have little dryer balls instead of the dryer sheets. They have, you know, dishcloths instead of paper towels. So it's how to, yeah, so. And they're locally based. So it's a woman-owned, locally based.
Yeah.
Small business. And she's going to be there herself.
Yeah, so it's mostly a lot of our existing partners. So like the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control, a lot of resources that are available to the town that most people don't know exist. So this is going to be a really good educational event for the town. Then we have a kid zone, which will be between the Green Vendor Fair area and the art exhibit in the Jennings Pavilion. And within that, we have the pop-up bug museum from the Beetle Lady. It's like on, yeah, like on the gravel out there.
The gravel.
Right.
Yeah, so and then we'll have the pop-up bug museum, a potting station, and the library over there. And I've outlined everything that the library is bringing. Then next to the kids potting station, between the kid zone and the main building, like between the gravel area and the steps, there's a big brick area. In front of that will be e-bikes. So we have 2 bike shops coming and bringing a bunch of e-bikes to try. One of the bike shops is going to be doing some programming in their tent area where they're going to be teaching about bike maintenance and local bike trails and stuff like that. And then on top of that, we have a bunch of residents bringing their own e-bikes to talk about what it's like to ride e-bikes around town. I think we have 5 for that. Then in Jennings Pavilion, we worked with the Atherton Arts Foundation to do an art exhibit. And we have a fairly well-known artist, Suki Bryan, does a lot of climate-focused artwork. She's going to be doing these large-scale activations outside and inside the pavilion. Plus the Atherton Arts Foundation volunteers and also 2 classrooms from Sacred Heart School are going to be doing an art exhibit. And then there's an Atherton resident who has hundreds of bonsai trees. He's, I guess, like bring them his bonsai trees to fix or babysit when they travel for long periods of time. He's like some crazy bonsai expert. So he's bringing hundreds of bonsai trees to fill between the art. So I think it's going to be really, really, really cool on the inside.
There's also live demonstrations.
And they're going to do an art class. And then on the next page, you can see some of the work from Suki Bryan that she's gonna, so you can get a sense of what she does. So she's gonna be partially wrapping part of Jennings Pavilion and also part of the main house in the park.
And the bathroom,
And part of
the
the
gray
bathroom.
little shed
Yeah,
bathroom by the kids' park.
yeah,
by
so
the
it's
kids'
gonna look
playground.
really cool and different for Earth Day.
Something on that.
Yeah, which is nice, because then we didn't have to pay for signage for any of these buildings, because you'll be able to see them. Then we have in the main house a speaker program. So we have 5 speakers, 2 of them will be videos. So we have our Senator Alex Padilla and our Congresswoman Anna Eshoo are doing video messages. And then we also have Rob Jackson from Stanford, Aaron Cook from SFO, and Eric Schultz, who's kind of like a media personality and future of food science expert. So they're all local and they'll be in person. Rick's going to be emceeing, and then so we'll do a brief presentations by all of them and then a Q&A session afterwards. Then there's also electric leaf blower bowling, which I've tried in my backyard. So you can see the scale.
But if we're gonna talk about the budget,
That's
we've got to
next.
get to it.
Yeah, we're getting
We've
there.
got
So the
10
next slide.
minutes.
Okay, no
That was
problem.
it.
Yeah, this is it. So I just wanted to show, because you guys are all part of the blowers, to see what it looks like. And these are giant inflatable pins and balls. So, Yeah, and that's my son for scale. So, okay, so budget. So as mentioned, we blew through our budget with the Athertonian. It's twice as much as we expected. Part is that we did not budget appropriately. I could have gotten more donations had we known the potential costs. We thought we had put a buffer in our budget in case it had gone over, because I thought it might go over. We just massively underestimated how much it would cost. And then we did not know about the overage until it was too late to make any corrections to the issue. So we that ship sailed before we knew we were in trouble. So the other thing is we did have a buffer within our original budget, but a lot of it, because this event is much bigger, we blew through our buffer, where stuff like Public Works went from $85 to $500 and that kind of stuff. We just didn't know. It's the first time we're doing such an event. So any buffer money that we used to have, we no longer have. And so we have, if you look at the budget document, we have a remaining $133 in our budget. The things that we haven't paid for right now are food, the kids' potting station, and kind of a random mishmash of other stuff. We potentially could make this event work without an additional money from the council, because we could opt not to do the potting station. We could opt to not provide any free food for our volunteers. We could get a food truck that has a low minimum and have them come, everyone pays for their food. We could do that. I think it would potentially, one, we've marketed a lot of these things. We've made promises to people about free food. So, and then also some of our existing costs are wanting to make sure the town of Atherton's table looks nice, make sure we have appropriate signage, make sure we're doing a last minute marketing push to make sure people show up to this event. So these are good things that we should spend money on. We can make it work without. So we could do this event within our budget. So lost myself. Got lost in my deck. So what we're proposing for the council, there's kind of two options as far as we see it. There's, please help us cover the cost of the Athertonian, restore our original budget as we had planned for the event, which was $5,000. So an additional $2,000, where we would just go back to what we had planned before we had known that the Athertonian was the cost that it was. Or if you want to give us even more money beyond that, we can provide more food to more people that we think would be appropriate to give food to, like, the police department, the fire department, the library staff, the people who have been really valuable partners for us in organizing this event. It would be nice to be able to offer them free lunch. It's not necessary. We haven't made those promises to them, but so that's kind of a discussion for council about what we want to set the precedent for in terms of if we host events like this, who do we want to provide food for? And then making sure we have enough funds to kind of do it right in terms of signage and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, so let's take questions. Any questions? Questions. I'll just add that in a conversation in a meeting that Diana and I had last week, she advised me that there wasn't enough money to cover the food trucks. And I said, well, I think we need to make sure that there's going to be food at the event. I don't feel the need to provide free food. I'm happy for people to pay for food, but there should be food available if people are going to be there over the lunch hour. At least something should be there. Yeah. And so because of that, I felt like this was an appropriate thing for us to discuss. So I pushed this forward to have this meeting.
Can I add that on our posters, we have volunteer posters that went out, and on that we said a free pack and food. So at minimum, the people who have signed up as volunteers, we really do need to pay. We need to give them lunch. And the other thing, to just drive home what you're saying, these vendors that are coming, like, let's take the e-cars, for example, they're coming at 11 in the morning and they cannot leave until 3. So we don't allow them to leave. If they come in and set up their stand, they have to stay there. So that, I don't know how we have to at least have food they can buy. So we have vendors who are kind of stuck there that have to be able to buy food. And we have a handful of people that we literally promise free lunch to. So at minimum, those volunteers who signed up off that thing that said free lunch and hat, should get lunch. But then there's more of people that would be good to give lunch to. It would be good form.
Okay, Bill.
Did you go back to some of your sponsors or some of the people that are actually coming and showing equipment and giving talks and things, to ask them that they would donate to the program?
We got 300 free Impossible Burgers. We have 100 and some free Eclipse ice creams that we're going to give away. So yes, we have some, and then we're going to have to try to, if we don't get the budget for it, we're going to have to get money for the potting station.
Or did you go back to Green Waste and ask them to pony up another 500, or Cal Water, or Peninsula
Haven't yet.
Clean Energy?
We
We
haven't
have
yet.
not done that because they're going to come and bring their stuff. We haven't asked them to also pay since they paid for the other thing.
My understanding is they've already mailed the checks, but I would be fine asking them if we need to. It's just so late. We need to make decisions about food faster than I think they would get back to us.
So the minimum, if I could summarize, the minimum that you're asking for is to cover the cost of the Athertonian, which that money's already been spent, so, okay. And you feel obligated to spend another $1,000 on the food for the volunteers. That seems pretty high for.
There's a minimum on the trucks. And we've talked to, I personally have talked to some ridiculous numbers of trucks, and most of the minimums are over 2,000. So the cheapest truck we could find was 1,000. So that's where we.
Don't they, that's the minimum they would make, but then as people go buy food from them, because
Yeah, I
people
think
will
that's-
buy that will bring that minimum down.
Can I answer that question differently? Maybe a
Okay.
little more clearly? So I think the
Sure.
question is, we can get a truck there and probably pay nothing because there's a guarantee and we'll hit that minimum. What we've made public commitments to are providing lunch to a certain number of people. We estimate it to be 50 people. So 50 times, let's say $12, $15 a person, that ends up being.
But what's
$1,000.
$12, $15?
That's what we're guessing for a lunch. If we've said we're paying for a lunch for all of our volunteers, we have about 50 people that are volunteering that we have made public promises to feed. We can go back to them and say.
But a
if we're
lunch is a burger. What, I thought you said Impossible Burgers giving away a bunch of,
Well, we haven't picked our food vendor yet. So I think because this is in play. So we have a few food options right now. Impossible Burgers has offered to donate us patties. We need to
donate
find
what? I couldn't hear.
just patties. So we need to
Just-
find someone to cook them.
Okay.
The whole
Yeah.
thing. So we're still working on, in negotiations with a food truck to essentially try and leverage the free meat for free meals for
Why
volunteers.
Whoa, hold on. We've got 5 more minutes. Go ahead, Bob.
What are you gonna do with the 300 burgers? Are you gonna sell them?
Yeah,
So-
well, so
Not to our volunteers.
that
Well,
we're,
not to- I understand that. but 300 burgers is way more than we got volunteers.
we're
Yeah.
negotiating, we're
You're gonna sell
trying
them, You got
to,
an income source, it's not on this piece of paper.
yeah,
Well,
total, I agree. And we're trying to negotiate that with a food truck. We just haven't gotten clarity on that before this meeting because we just got that donation yesterday.
but it's not clear there would be profit from that. That they have a minimum that on the truck. So the issue what Bill had said was that if they sell a sufficient amount, then we don't have to pay them the minimum.
Yeah.
We only pay them the minimum if they don't sell the sufficient amount.
So right now, what we're trying to do right now, but it's not official. So we haven't gotten confirmation from the food truck is we're essentially trying to trade the 300 free burgers for comped lunches for the volunteers, because then they could sell it. This would be a significant cost reduction from them because they wouldn't have to be paying the meat, and the meat is worth $1,500 or so. So it's essentially the same as the food. We just haven't gotten that locked down with the food truck yet. So I can't say definitively that we can do that
I
yet.
thought that there was a
sell-
question.
Okay, go ahead,
that
Bill.
You were saying, can Rick and I do the cooking? And I said, yes, I can do the cooking. All we need is a grill. I cooked over 300 burgers yesterday.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna say to you what I said to George. This is like a family barbecue where the wife goes and buys the buns, the salad, everything, gets the plates, says the whole entire thing, and then one person comes and flips it. The amount of effort involved in getting the buns, getting all that is way off our budget. It won't save us any money to do that, and we don't have the volunteers to do all the other parts.
Why
So-
you says we're off your budget if Bill or I or Rick goes to deposit stuff?
Well, you're gonna, well, first of all, we have to get the grill. There is one we can get donated, made. So we have to
Said we're
rent a
not gonna have
grill,
enough
we have to
time.
have a tent, we have to
We
have
don't
the
have a-
tables, we have
Well,
to have
we've
buns
got
and
another
all
meeting
the
coming.
stuff.
Doesn't hurt. I understand that. But just the cost of the buns and the napkins and so on and so forth is not a big deal.
But we still have to have.
Is there a motion or else I'm going to end the meeting?
I just want to interject a little bit. So what we're talking about is that additional $1,000, okay?
I'll make a motion that we authorize $3,000
I'll second
to
that.
cover the expense of the Athertonian and to provide for food, not to give it away, but to enable there to be more food
Way to
there.
volunteer.
But I will,
Yeah.
I will second that with the amendment that if there is a profit made and any money left over, that it comes back to the town.
And I think it should be managed by the staff, as George suggested.
Yes.
It's been made and seconded.
Off of the road.
All in favor?
I
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. And any abstentions? Looks like all five, right? I didn't hear you, but,
I said,
okay, good,
I
thank
voted,
you.
I don't know if I was supposed
Okay.
to, but all right.
I didn't yell at that.
Motion to adjourn the special meeting.
It wasn't something I wanted to yell at.
Incredible. To put this
It's-
together, this is the
Right
best
there.
that you've done. It's really, really
pain.
incredible.
So-
This-
Sorry.
You read this?
No, I just got it. I just was in the lobby
Just
now.
got it today.
This I received in the mail today.
You should read it, because this is well done.
But this came in the mail today.
I didn't get that.
Well, it came in my mail today.
Well, I was getting caught.
So,
All right. Well, I'm gonna put the thing right
Well,
by my bedside.
welcome, welcome. Nice to see you, Chuck. Great.
So are you representing the whole group?
Well,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
no, Jim's here.
All right, let's go.
Hi, Jim.
Hi there.
How you doing?
Bye, Stacy.
Yeah, Director Solano is on Zoom. Can they hear it now? Yes. Okay, great.
We're 3 minutes. We're 3 minutes early.
Why, we haven't started the meeting. We're just talking.
Anthony, could you also?
We've got a little challenge as we break this room in with the technology. From the beginning, it was designed to be hybrid, so we could continue our hybrid meetings as we come back. And this is only the second meeting we've had in this room.
Does one need a microphone to speak
It picks up, I think they pick up very well.
So
They're highly sensitive.
Loudly, don't pick up. We're gonna be getting more mics. Right now, this-
We just gave away our money to the EDC.
That's right.
You don't mean it.
Although Elizabeth told me
Yeah.
that we used to give $30,000 to the.
No, we
EDC.
never did.
Yes, we did.
5,000.
No, 5,000 since I've been on the council.
5,000 since I've been on. And then there was a couple of years we didn't give anything because there was no. It's always been.
It's right in there, yeah.
They made a mistake on the.
We've been
Okay, they should have been advised.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Mine is.
Well, I don't,
Whoever
I think there were,
does it.
some
You better hope you did next to
organizational
me.
issues
I've never had one
which
in my
George
hands.
addressed in his
You
email,
can see how it's gonna go.
which wasn't appropriate to talk about today.
Oh,
But I
we have a
recommended
picture
that
of
we
it
have
if
a
you wanna
special
see
meeting to address
what it looks
those
like.
issues.
I agree.
Not a special meeting, but one of
This
the
is what it looks like.
Wednesday
Yeah, that'll be
afternoon.
fun.
It's inflatable, but we haven't really tried it on a rough grass. So tomorrow we're gonna actually do the official test to see if it works. But,
Is there a prize
for the winner?
no, I think that there's embarrassment for the
They made
loser, though. I don't know.
That shouldn't.
Prize
be
for the
named.
winner. All right. Hadn't thought of that.
I'm surprised it went from 85,
dinner, I don't know.
85 volunteers.
These two are online.
Be a steak dinner.
Okay.
85
85.
It'd be a vegan, yeah, vegan district.
Yeah, I had heard there were 100. I think they don't.
You know, if Director Crowley's coming online or in person?
I don't know. I was just checking to see who it was.
We've got a couple minutes remaining.
If anybody wants to grab coffee.
My phone says 2.
She's joining online.
And go here.
Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Feels particularly appropriate as we think about all the news we're getting on Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay, could we have a couple roll calls, please?
Councilmember Polito. Here. Councilmember Hawkins.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Vice Mayor Whitmer.
Yep, here.
and Mayor
I'm
Pavilion.
here.
Board Member Bernstein. Here, present. Corrali.
Present.
Line. Board Member Solano.
Here.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
Awesome, Board Member McLaughlin.
Here.
Great. Okay, is there any public comment? No public comment?
Don't see anyone online.
Okay. So the agenda that I have is 2 items. One is support for local emergency preparedness groups, and the second is joint agency collaboration opportunities. That, George.
Sure. I'll take the item number 3 first. This is support for local emergency preparedness groups, ADAP, search communications. The fire board liaison and city council liaison that narrow the agenda to each topics on the agenda today. And so for the first one, I'm going to turn it over to the chief and the chief. Talk about ADAP, CERT communications, and joint collaborative efforts in the district and the Dell.
All right, thank you. So in the short time the fire chief has been here, we've had a great opportunity to meet on several occasions. A couple of those around ADAPT and talking about communications issues with ADAPT. We identified within ADAPT from the communications drill that we identified some ways forward for ADAPT to improve communications. And one of those is an idea that we've been discussing is providing a cache of family radios to the different block coordinators, along with some other material that they can have ready to go when an emergency happens and they need to communicate to each other. Better communication and improved communication to what we hope is a ham radio operator in the area, which will be connected here at the EOC.
Good afternoon. For those that I haven't met, I'm Mark Lorenzen, your new fire chief for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. So been here a little over 2 months. Like the chief was saying, we've had a lot of great opportunities to already engage with our communities. We have, well, now some really engaged volunteers and some interest. You have a wonderful group with ADAPT. I was one of the guest speakers. I think after the chief was the very first, I was the second, and had an opportunity to both share some ideas with them and also listen. So as we said, we are looking in every way we can to support our community volunteers, whether it's through training, some leadership, additional communications, maybe providing some type of assistance in the form of equipment or drills. So this is just a really great opportunity. Looking forward to hearing from both of our boards what kind of ideas you have related to that, and trying to figure out how we can support.
Great. Well, I don't think we need to separate questions and comments. Anybody who wants to address it? Chuck?
I just, because people may not know, I just want to be sure that everybody knows, we have two staff members from the fire district here also. We have our fire marshal, John Johnston. And we have Ryan Zollicoffer, who is the head of our Office of Emergency Management. So for those of you who don't know the two of them, I just wanted to be sure that you had their names.
Great. Welcome.
Let's bridge onto that, Director and Mayor. Ryan, could you maybe elucidate a little bit for the whole group, what your role is amongst all of the cities? And how you train, whatever.
Yeah, I know we've got some training before, so I appreciate the question. So my role as a fire district is I'm exclusively the national response manager, so I ensure that our agency complies with the National Incident Management System and M.P.F.P.D 1600. So a lot of my work is building large scale incident management plans for the fire operational side, and then how that integrates with each municipality. We also provide additional support on training and EOC operations. So from time to time, I'll work with each of the liaisons for each city and do EOC exercises and drills as far as communications and command trainings and whatnot. I also work with the schools and the businesses. Right now, we're doing a lot of school outreach as far as identifying who the point person is as far as emergency management contacts. And then so we can build training exercises around schools, working with the fire district. So I kind of have a lot of different roles. I'm the liaison to the city, but my primary responsibility in fire district is to ensure that our plans are in place and that we can integrate with each municipality as far as large government management. So we do a lot of EOC drills, and right now I'm overseeing the CERT program. And one of the things that we're promoting is our top 5 programs. I have that here, our big 5 programs. So we're running our CERT program, which we offer 3 times a year. The last one just got completed in March. We got one coming up in June, and the third one in October. We run our Red Cross Ready, which is an all-hazard 90 minutes emergency preparedness class throughout all the jurisdictions every month. That's the second Wednesday of each month. We offer CPR first aid and aid the first Saturday each month as well. And the class that I'm working with Stanford, the Education Center on is Stop the Boot, and we have a training coming up on the 25th. All of our information can be found at menlofirecert.com. We built out a really robust website that supports all these additional programs. So we run the community parents programs, general services, as well as we have subject matter experts in EOC operations. And then again, my role is doing incident management planning, large scale incidents with fire.
I know 3 of our council members, excuse me, over the years, we've done emergency drills on our old public works building over there. Ryan's been there to do web EOC training and other EOC incident training right there at that site. But all of our council members, as you know, need ICF. Whatever those numbers are, how would you suggest that they get that sort of?
So the best way to get that is first do that to FEMA, get an SID number. And then what we can do is we can do a generalized training as far as refresher and pulling that information together. But FEMA, the Institute of Emergency Management, will issue them the official certifications that they do need, which is ICS 100 and 700. I don't think they have to get the 800, which is talked about the National Response Plan, but ICS 700, 100. And then we can tie in with the council members and just go over the information that they completed online.
And I can follow up. So go ahead. Sir.
I just want to say, I know years ago, we did this and I was certified, but I think that you have to renew.
No, there's no review. I mean, if you got an official certification, there's no renewal. It's like one and done. I would definitely probably add this caveat is that there's a class online too, which is the independent study, the 908, which is our senior elected officials. That's a really good class to have in your elected roles, because it really kind of assesses as far as what is your real responsibility in regards to the policy group and to EOC operations. And it doesn't really get so much involved in the command and general staff positions of ICF. It keeps you at your governance level and your policy level. So that's a good class to have.
Bill.
So when I went through the cert, and a number of people, residents that went through it with me a while ago, when we got our cert badges, it said it's good through 2022. So now, so is there some sort of renewal process or what? When I've asked at drills, is there going to be something? Is there something? They say, no, it shouldn't have said that. I don't know what the situation is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we're figuring out right now is we're trying to figure out what programs you're aligned with. The fire district is in the process of finding those that want to be affiliated, that want to be part of a mission response capability and go out the door and volunteer, whether it's in Atherton, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, or any of our unincorporated. We're trying to put together a task book, which is a training plan. We would have to do the background and make you an affiliated member of the fire district. In the past, I believe that they gave you a card, is what I've been told.
Yeah.
And there's been really, it was a card, identification card. What we're trying to do is we're kind of shore up that process. But the question is, ADAP has its own cert members too. So, you know, there's this, what agency are you affiliated with? So
Yeah,
that you're
I'm with
underneath those
ADAP.
governance.
Yeah, I'm with ADAP. And
Yeah.
then there was something online that said, you know, would you be willing to go outside of your jurisdiction?
Right.
And we filled those out.
Right.
It was at least 2 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't heard anything since.
So just
Jesse, if you-
to make sure.
I'll give you my
anybody
card.
Yeah,
we
let's
can get
follow up on
together.
that because we're going to be in the process of
We
restructuring
don't
that.
have a monitor in front of us, so if you want to speak, wave your hand or speak up, because unlike you can see all kinds of information about other people on Zoom. We don't have that here. Diane.
I was going to comment that the closing the loop between the CERT training and making sure that ADAP, one of the things we want to know is who in our neighborhood is trained.
Mhm.
And it would be nice at our 13 assembly points to have a list of who in that neighborhood is a doctor, if we're stuck, and who in that neighborhood is CERT trained. So that loop of getting that permission, I know is a privacy issue, but when you train somebody, we have to figure out a way to circle back so that we all connect.
Yeah, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but Sergeant Fong is the agency representative for the town of Atherton with emergency preparedness. I could work with him, and one of the things we're going to do in our initial entry form is have those check boxes, and as long as they check that they're okay with disclosing that information to our mutual partners, we'll just go ahead and forward that to our liaison in each city
That'd
and
be
town.
awesome.
Because I agree with you. As we are the training center, these residents go back into the community, and it's imperative that they become part of your mobilization teams, that you can identify them, because it's part of the process of map your neighborhood. It's just as like map the personnel resources and the competency as far as what training and where they're at. So again, we agree with that intake form.
Great.
I have a question. I assume the CERT program is a district-wide program. And I'm personally not really familiar with it. I'm very involved with ADAP.
Mhm.
But I don't know what the overlap is between ADAP and CERT. I assume CERT's a volunteer program.
Yeah, CERT's it's an all-inclusive all hazards programs. We run it for about 3 days long. We offer it 3 times a year. It provides the basic first responder skills that one would need, like search and rescue, fire safety, triage and treat, and cribbing. And what happens is these individuals, once they're trained, the responsibility is they would go back into their neighborhoods, into their homes, and they help with the mitigation strategy for the first responders, where they won't necessarily be taxing our emergency services because of the fact that they have some of that fundamental foundation training in place. The neighborhood groups, if there are neighborhood groups like ADAP and some of these other groups, if they want to cultivate the training that these individuals went through the process and form this citizen response team in their neighborhood, that's where they could take that talent, those individuals, and kind of deploy them. If they want to be affiliated with the fire district as CERT, they would fill out a form and they would be part of the CERT affiliated cadre. If they choose to say, no, thanks, I don't want to be part of the fire district affiliated cadre, but I'm going to go back into my neighborhood, that's how they get incorporated and rolled out. So we're like the institution of, I'm not going to use the words higher education, but we are the institution of subject matter experts in the field of emergency response. So we provide that basic generalized training to the community as a mitigation strategy. we're just gonna have to
Sorry,
pass
no,
it
that's
around.
okay.
There's people online.
That's
Folks
okay.
on Zoom have a couple of hearings, so we'll have to.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Elizabeth?
No, I think he explained that really well, because my question always has been, is how do we merge in our ADAP team of CERT volunteers with, the fire district's programs that they have?
Mhm.
And so that, we work together and we're not, working at cross purposes.
Absolutely.
At the risk of exposing dirty laundry,
Yes.
I want to say that I don't think there is a coherent plan at the fire district level at this point.
Okay.
So I know Ryan is speaking from a professional standpoint and what professionals are looking for. But I think a number of us on the board have a different vision of what CERT is and should be. And one of the reasons even for holding this joint meeting is to kind of hear from you too. So I'm just trying to make it clear that it's not settled how we do this. For example, the fire service is a very hierarchical organization and, reporting structure and so forth. It's totally unsuited for disasters where people just have to spontaneously respond as needed. My opinion is that we need to have a more flexible response organization at the local level, which is what I would be looking at. I live in Menlo Park, but what MPC Ready or ADAPT or Repact in East Palo Alto could do. They wouldn't be mobilized. The earthquake happens, boom, they're gone. They didn't get a call. No officials, did a little communication thing or something. They just respond. But at the professional ranks, there's this idea of, we're going to mobilize them and they'll do sandbags and things like that, or they'll do shelter, which is 3 days afterward. I think it's just not very clear. And I think we're searching for the right program to use here. And I think, well, anyway, I just want to be clear that I just didn't want to have a one-sided view of this, because I think there is a broader view from the volunteers themselves. And I'm a CERT trained person, and I'm part of that CERT response as well.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you, Chuck, for adding that. Go ahead.
My question is, right now, the city of Atherton has an event once a year where we do this big drill. What is the role in the fire department in that drill and CERT? I mean, who comes to that? Because from my understanding, it's not just Atherton people.
But it's not the city of Atherton does that.
Who puts that?
Adapt.
So
ADAPT.
our private citizens put that on?
No, it was,
But
yeah.
CERT people
Tom
come as well.
Pressing did, ADAP, right? Yes. And so, yeah, but the ADAP is just not only Atherton residents, right? I mean, he would draw people from all over the peninsula. Yeah. Which was, a huge crowd. And so that was impressive. That is impressive. And so we're hoping that ADAPT momentum, continues and continues to grow.
But wait, but ADAPT is principally an African community group organized to respond to disasters because we fundamentally believe we're going to be on our own. And there are others that come too, because it's been very well organized for the drills that we've done once a year. And I'm not suggesting that's appropriate for other communities in the district. I'm not really, it sounds like CERT would provide a level of specific emergency response training that would be maybe a little more than what most of us in ADAPT have gotten from just doing the drills that we've done.
But there have been drills in every of the major communities. So there has been one in EPC, or EPA, as well as Menlo Park, and then Atherton, doing 3 a year. And those were good training opportunities. And the fire district was always there, and they showed us additional things. So while they had the drones and everything like that, one time we did cribbing. you know, or another time they critiqued us going into a building that was damaged by an earthquake. How do you do search and rescue if there's absolutely no lights on and stuff like that? So they observed it and they critiqued us. And so it was kind of a joint. It was kind of a joint thing, but yes, the ADAP head, which was Tom Pressing, he developed a scenario of events, and it would be multiple pages, and it would say, at this time, this is what happens, at this time, this is what happens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we went through that, and we ended up practicing that. And so, and there was something similar. Tom did that for the other communities as well. And as Elizabeth has pointed out, certain people from all over came to those too, because everybody wants that extra training. But it gave an opportunity for people who hadn't gone to CERT to actually learn and participate. So the drills are great.
If I may, just kind of coming back to what Director Bernstein brought up to us, you know, from the fire board's direction and position. We've got 3 members on Zoom and 2 here in the room. I just wonder if any other board member wants to speak to that, because maybe at the board level, we need to have, you know, an agreement how we can, you know, work together with our ADAP and our CERT community in a more you know, effective way. If what I heard Director Bernstein saying, that the board doesn't have a policy. Director?
Go ahead.
Being the other director in the room, I'll
The other director in the room.
address that. I would like to see, you know, the district has a wealth of, I think our greatest resource is our highly qualified, trained personnel. They have a wealth of experience and knowledge, you know, when it comes to preparedness and then the actual, you know, response. I want to be sure that the district is doing what we can to support citizen volunteer groups within the district, whether that be equipment or training, organizing the drills. I think we play an important role in that. I think one of the reasons I was disappointed with the study that we commissioned was I was looking for, you know, what is the existing structure and how does that deviate from, you know, a more desirable condition. So I think we still have, from my perspective, some work to do there, just organizationally. How does that get accomplished? How does the district best support the community groups with those things that I mentioned? So that's, again, from my perspective, I think the district plays really an essential role in that, you know, the training, the exercises, and equipment.
And equipment. Diana, you.
Yeah, I have actually a clarifying question. Do the Menlo Park and the East Palo Alto Citizens Group run their own drill like Atherton? You said that we go to East Palo Alto. Are you saying that Atherton goes and runs our thing? And
Tom ran them all.
well, Tom's gone.
And
which
he
is big,
organized,
and
and
we
he
all
organized
feel
it all.
like that was,
But I don't know who the president is right now.
well, that's a big question.
She's right behind.
It's
you.
Tom
I know,
Owen.
but she'll tell you it's.
No, I think it's,
Tom Owen.
Tom Owens.
Yes.
is the president, and I don't know if he or working with, you know, Ryan's team are going to make the scenarios and organize it or not. I don't know. I can't tell you. There hasn't been really a big emergency practice, really.
Right.
We had lots of people. And so,
Well, we did have that big.
yeah.
Right.
That was-
That was
Tom
right after well, during.
So Tom left, but do the other cities, let me ask you, I guess,
Sure.
do the other cities run their own equivalent, or are we literally, as our little citizen group, going around and doing everybody else's too?
I'll try and answer it with my little knowledge that I have here. I can't tell you what they have done in the past. my goal would be is for us to coordinate a drill that all three cities can attend. And so we can all work together. And whether we rotate that around through the three communities, I mean, that would be the preference. But I think a small enough group where we could do that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Chief, the reason there was something that was done in each of the communities is because we removed it within those communities. So as we were going out and doing search and rescue and things like that in those communities, there would be an education from that surrounding neighborhood as you would go into a place where, you know, you've been sent because there's been quote unquote an injury or something like that. If the people were home, we showed them how to turn off their water, turn off their gas. Okay, and then we would also tell them what we were doing and invited them if they wanted to come down. So it was an education of the community around as well as that. So it'd be great if the fire district could do that, but I think that there was a value of it going into each of the communities as opposed to one central one. Sure.
And then for Atherton, because Tom Preston, Tom Owen is here. Tom did run those, but our specific focus is for Atherton. When the other communities have their trainings, certainly that members will go to get that experience. But for ADAPT to be trained and then to have block coordinators and area coordinators, so our residents can get ready and be ready to respond, because when something happens, we tell them up front, we're not going to be able to come for a day, 2 days. And so that's their whole mission. And the training plan is still the training plan. Every month, there's another training topic, much like CERT, that leads up to September, that includes a communications drill to then actually practice what they've learned throughout the year.
Are the other cities as organized as we are?
That's a great question. So I've attended the three different meetings. They all have different levels of participation. M.P.C.Ready seems to be pretty robust. They're all focused a little bit differently. And so back to that question that you asked, maybe perhaps, and again, with the benefit of time, we want to make sure that we give you what you need for your organization. So perhaps it ends up being a large district-wide CERT refresher and then individual things to address what ADAPT needs and M.P.C.Ready and the EPA, what is it called? Repact. So don't remember what your question was specifically.
I'm trying to ask whether the other
Oh.
cities are based on districts. We have assembly points. And our philosophy is that our citizens go to a neighborhood, and we have 13 in our city. Are the other cities based the same way, or
I
is it?
think Director Bernstein probably, since he's a part of the M.P.C.Ready group.
Yeah, let me say, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the raise hand function. I just want to, well, first of all, I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but let me just answer Diana's question really quickly. Diana, I think each city is different. Each jurisdiction is different, and they're probably organizing in the way they see the best way of doing it for their individual communities would be. So I think like for M.P.C.Ready, I've been involved with that, as has Chuck. You know, it's a much larger area. So they've got like the block coordinators, probably the basic structure is very similar, but their needs are pretty different just because it's a much more diverse city and they've got a bigger area. I don't want to speak for Repact, but you know, I think they're just trying to do what they need to do to organize in the best way possible. And Robert can probably speak to that. But I mean, Chuck, I didn't mean to interrupt. You might have some other thoughts regarding Menlo Park.
I think Virginia's right. I mean, it is different. Just to give you an example, I am what's called area coordinator for the Willows, which is on the other side of Willow Road. At the height of the pandemic, I had a little over 100 volunteers, each of them having a couple block area. And when we started meeting, right, there were like 85 people on the Zoom call, and it was fabulous. And what we tried to do is take a census of all the areas that we had, find out who the vulnerable people were, who might need help for shopping and things like that. And as you imagine, after about 2 months, the interest kind of died at that point, to the point where we'd have 20 people at a meeting and so forth. And that one of the problems is kind of keeping this all going. And, but it is the same kind of organization. We don't have the rally points, although in the Willows, we have our field hospital set up at the school. I mean, there's nothing there, but that's where it would be. We've got, I mean, so we know where we would go. One of the things when you do it from the ground up, from grassroots, is you don't worry about the niceties. Unfortunately, when you're a professional and you work for an agency such as ours, and Ryan is in that, Ryan has to do it in the more official way. It's just what's called upon. So people would say to us, well, did you get permission to use that property? And we said, no, in an emergency, we're just going to commandeer it. And that will be our emergency place. And that's the difference between kind of a commando organization, ground up, and one of those military top-down organizations. So that's different. Now, Atherton is a little bit more spread out and was able to do it in a more organized way. Menlo Park's much more chaotic in terms of neighborhoods and things.
Virginia?
I just want to ask a follow-up question. Do you have caches of equipment stashed
Yes.
around in places in the park?
Yes.
And you feel like you are well equipped?
We are very well equipped. The caches were all behind locked gates that nobody can get into. So we used to make a joke that our first training need to be breaking and entering so we could get to the caches. But that's kind of the disconnect between the official part and the grassroots
Where
part.
did you get the caches from?
The district provided them.
Okay.
Are they the same as
I know,
ours?
Go ahead, Virginia.
Thank you, Rick. So Chuck is right, but again, I'm going to just stress that every area is different and they're not all in the same, at the same level of preparedness and execution. And I really think that like for MPC Ready, my being a resident of unincorporated West Menlo, we've kind of merged together with them because the unincorporated Menlo area is just smaller. But if you look at North Fair Oaks, it is significantly bigger and there are more needs, and they're just not. The fire district has reached out to them. And I bring this up because North Fair Oaks kind of is pretty close to Atherton, you know, when you get to Middlefield Road, that area. But so I just want you to know that, you know, the fire district is trying to be as responsive and as possible as little areas get ramped up and are ready to be more involved. And I know that North Fair Oaks is one of those communities.
Robert, could you hear me? If you have your hand up.
You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
There's two things that I want to maybe throw out and point out to the group, to everyone. I think that, as Virginia said, and I think others have said, that each community is uniquely different, but they're the same. When an emergency happens, we all should be able to move from community to community with the same standard of structure, so that we're all talking and responding in the same way. The two areas, one has to focus on understanding what that structure will look like, that command structure that the group will perform under. I think when Tom was running the emergency program exercise, we went from community to community, and there was a continuous structure there, so that if you left Atherton and went to East Palo Alto, that structure would be the same. So I think that's paramount as to making sure that whatever we do, whatever the district dug in and the community engaged in, that there is a uniform structure there so that we all can, if get called to that area or end up in the area, that we really know how to follow commands and follow the structure. The second area of concentration has I think the district is going to have to focus on as well as the communities, what type of equipment, what type of that will be needed for each of the communities. I know that at the beginning of the conversation, there was someone mentioned about having caches and enough radios to support the neighborhood. And I think there was someone mentioned there was about 13 neighborhoods in Atherton that has been identified. But the broader question is, what type of what kind of radios are you actually looking for the district to support in? Is it radios to fit in everybody's hand? Is it FRS, MRS, or everybody have a ham operating system with them? So I think that's going to be important because as you say, part of what I see the board really focusing in on is developing those policies and procedures around making sure that happens throughout the district and not necessarily to one area or the other. I hear the need being expressed today. So, and I think that need goes across the grain to all of the other communities. So to me, those are the two areas that I think in terms of making sure that there's proper structure. And I think Ryan and his staff is trying to put together that structure there so that we can all operate and have the same type of skills necessary in order to repeat that same action in other communities. And also looking at the equipment and supplies that is necessary to make sure that each area is fairly well stocked with what they need when a disaster happens. I'm done.
Is there such a thing as the best practices that are dictated, I don't know, nationally or by the county, or is there such thing as what the best way to do this? I know in some cities it's called block coordinators. I don't know if ours with the assembly points and then we have, that kind of structure. I don't know. What is their best practices, I guess I'm asking, that we could then cookie cutter across?
Yeah.
That kind of goes to what Director McLaughlin brought up, which is the first step is to really analyze what we've got and what would be best to have. I know for Atherton, adapt, really the premises we're on our own. And we're going to make sure we take care of our neighborhoods. And we're pretty organized. I mean, we have a coordinator for, I think, almost every one of the 13 areas. Now, that doesn't mean that we have procedures that are necessarily really well defined. To Director Jones's point, I think that level of direction, and I think adapt, I would speak, I'm an area coordinator. I do what adapt has instructed us to do, which is we have an assembly point. People who pay attention in the neighborhood know where the assembly point is because there's a sign that says it's an assembly point. We know we go to that assembly point in the event of an emergency, and then we take direction from the EOC. But it could probably be better defined in terms of a standardization of procedure, as Director Jones said, and I think we'd be very open to making adjustments that would be better for the district to standardize that across the different jurisdictions, with the exception, I think we would want the exercises for us to be in our district. And I'm sure East Palo Alto and Menlo Park would want the same, because I don't think I'm going to learn as much by going to another district when everybody's trying to get together, when if we have an emergency, like a big earthquake here, and we're going to be in our home district.
It's really just procedural. We have our ADAPT, and right now Tom Owens is the head of the ADAPT, and there's like an ADAPT board that kind of helps manage that board. in Menlo Ready, do you have a hierarchy like that? Is there one head guy or gal, and then, you know, a little team of volunteers that help on a monthly basis, reach out and keep everybody up to date and educated and things like that? And the same thing for the repack.
The quick answer is yes, but ADAPT is more mature as an organization
Okay.
than any other organization.
So my follow-up would be that the heads of those three organizations should really kind of get together and do what Mayor DeGoya is talking about, and kind of creating, you know, a standardization for, you know, the responses for all of our
The
communities.
district could lead that.
That, or the
Those are
fire
three
district. could-
Volunteer organizations, we know how what it's like to be in a volunteer organization.
Exactly, but
People get strapped and don't have.
no, exactly. But if we have the same kind of training going down throughout, even if the district, the fire district kind of takes the lead and gets those three groups together, because I don't think that's ever happened, to my knowledge. Maybe, Susan, do you
It
know?
used to, there was a chance, opportunity a couple of years ago that all three neighborhoods plus the unincorporated area was meeting on a monthly basis to kind of do what you just got to mention in terms of trying to put together a structure that everyone could agree to. That got disbanded, and so I think there's some encouragement to kind of look at that again, that particular structure, maybe not in the larger scale that it was in, but maybe whether it gets down to the area leaders for each one of those cities getting together to look at it and talking about it, and then being able to disseminate that information to its own group at that point in time. But yeah, I think that is in order. Maybe we should look at that a little bit further, because we do over in East Palo Alto, and I'm the person that's trying to facilitate that activity over there. We do like Atherton, and Atherton has been our leading model for looking and structuring things in our area. We do have neighborhood coordinators. We also have block leaders, and we're trying to, and we have 6 neighborhoods in our particular community we have identified. So we're trying to look to staff up all of those areas, as well as a sufficient enough block coordinators, captains to be able to support the neighborhood coordinator and activities goes on there.
Bill, then Rob, then Virginia.
Yeah, so, you know, as Director just said, and as I mentioned earlier, all of the CERT people, this all started, you know, before there was even CERT. And then as we got more and more people trained outside of Atherton, and we expanded what we were doing, people from other communities participated. In fact, a lot of people who did a lot of the leading in ADAP were actually from Menlo Park. And so they took back what we were doing here with the, you know, locations and everything. And then, you know, it was a couple of years ago, all the area coordinators, we sent out letters to every one of our residents and asked them how many people live at the house, and, you know, did they understand what was going on? We would also give them, you know, the get ready print that we did. And I think the other communities were considering doing that too. So we've tried to, at least in Atherton, as well as to propagate out to the other organizations, since they were actually a participant in this, you know, how to organize your community. Now, some people don't want to give out all that information. We understand that. And some people are, you know, say, even here in Atherton, say, you know, I'm not going to go to an assembly point, I'm going to stay at my house. But But we've tried to make sure that we know what we're doing. The issue is we need to refresh it. And, you know, and then normally when we ran the drills, you know, and Chuck, and in Virginia, you guys can, contribute, but normally it was certain people that were leading the different areas or leading the search and rescue team. And so the other people that were there that were just volunteers coming because they were interested or they'd been going to the ADAP meetings, but they would then learn from doing at the same time. And that's kind of how we grew the thing organically. Now ADAP, if you go to the ADAP, all their meetings are taped, they have special programs there, how to, what's a go bag? How do you build a go bag? How do you do this? How do you do that? All that is there. And so that could be propagated out to the other areas if they don't have their own. But yeah, this thing started in Victoria Manor, then grew to Lindenwood, and then it became a town-wide thing. So it is pretty well organized, at least here in Atherton. We could use more emergency caches, but and we could use communications equipment. I think definitely from an ADAP standpoint, that's what we need. And one or two more caches. We need one at Menlo College. There's 1,000 people there during the day. 1,000, that's, that's enough to have a cache. And we have a couple other areas we could use another cache. So, but that, I think that's gives you a little overview of how we've tried to propagate from an ADAP standpoint, propagate the information out to the other communities because they wanted to be, participate in all the drills and they come to the meetings even today. So anyway.
I've got Rob in Virginia. I just wanted to know, we just had a train go by in either direction. And if we had been in that old building, the way you speak, everybody would have had to stop talking.
I didn't even hear it, Rick. Is that a good thing?
It's progress. Rob. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question that I've always had, that I've sat on this board is, I know that Atherton is a town city that has the jurisdictional authority as through the state to do the DSW certification and to actually run an emergency preparedness OES because of the authority that the state gives you. Who in a disaster? Okay, we have 3 cities, and then we have the unincorporated area of the county. Are we going to set up 3 individual OESs since the authority rests through the state, through each of the cities and town and communities that we have? And the fire district, being a special district, doesn't have that authority. So how are we going to work that out?
George?
Happy to talk about that, Director Solano. So, I mean, you're right. When an emergency strikes, where we operate under these instructions like everybody else, and we would implement our EOC as need dictates, and it could go from 1 to 50 people. In this room here, as our EOC, we've got 12 lines on the floor and those sorts of things. And then we would swear in disaster.
Can you speak up a little bit? I have a problem hearing being on a Zoom call.
So we would swear in disaster service workers and go through all of that process, as well as we set them up in the community based on need, whether they're working at a shelter in the park or helping us with, emergency search and rescue or anything like that, whether they're a CERT volunteer or a local ADAP individual, we would handle that as well through our EOC. But with respect to operating 3 independent EOCs, I think that's really based on need. I mean, we're not going to send our public works staff into Menlo Park to sit inside of their EOC if the disaster is a localized disaster in Atherton. That doesn't make sense to us. So we would probably function in that way, just like Menlo Park or EPA would.
All right, well,
Coordinate with.
I don't,
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think Atherton is the problem here because ADAPT is pretty structural. And since your police chief coordinates with ADAPT, I don't consider Atherton an issue. What I consider are the city of Menlo Park, where I think it's still where they don't even have a representative from the city of Menlo Park that either coordinates or is a representative to work with some of these volunteer groups. And I don't think the fire district, since we are a special district, are the communities that we serve going to delegate that authority to us as a fire district, even though we're a special district? Or do we rely on the three communities or three cities in one town or two cities in one town relative to that authority? So it's, I think it's definitely a confusing situation since an earthquake would affect all of us. But if it's a situation as a fire, it would probably be very simplistic because there'd be an OES or some type of a command center that would be set up by either the town or the cities that we serve. So that's what I'd like a definition of. I'd like to see who's going to be in charge. I don't think we've ever done that.
Well, wouldn't it, Rob, my understanding is, I guess the county would be in charge. And my understanding is in the emergency services board meetings, Menlo Park Fire District has always been a part of that.
Well, they're not a member, Bill. The fire district is not a member of that board.
Well, maybe the chief needs to handle that, but I believe that you've come to the meeting, so I don't know how you're not a board member if you're not coming to.
We are not members of that county board as a fire district because we are a special district.
There's no doubt for me, for us, we go to our EOC, our city manager's in charge. And I mean, I know what we're doing.
That's
And-
the way most communities do it.
So,
And then we go to the
Virginia,
county.
you had your hand up, you took it down.
Yeah, I kind of agree that if we're all going to be on the same page at a more centralized level through the fire district, maybe it's, and I'm trying to not be Mrs. Fix-It, but maybe that is something that we talk about in the emergency preparedness committee meeting. And maybe we have a mini meeting of just the leaders of the three groups. I mean, I'm just throwing an idea out there. I mean, because I do think that if there's, and we have an opportunity right now with the new chief, especially since, he's kind of learning, but also, might bring some ideas that he's worked with before into what we could do better. Maybe that's something that we should do, is to have the leaders of the three groups, I guess, and the chief together to see, what we can do, kind of what Elizabeth said. But I'm just 1/5, and that's my 2 cents. So I don't know how others feel, but I do think that maybe the people who are working and volunteering on the ground might be able to give better input than we can sit here and guess about. Is that Elizabeth? I can't, are you speak? Oh, okay. It's very hard to hear y'all. Sorry. I'm trying to.
I was just going to circle back to Atherton. I'm on our citizen committee, and I participated recently in a communication drill we did. And some of that's what's driving this, is that we got out with our little walkie-talkies. We get out with our little walkie-talkies, and they didn't work. They didn't work for a number of reasons, even within the drill, and I participated in that. And I am not trained, so I am clearly the citizen that's going to be the people doing this. But the walkie-talkies weren't at the right channel. Because of our trees, the transmission, we couldn't. So we have this whole scenario set up where we have these 13 centers, and then everyone from their neighborhood is supposed to call in. but we couldn't reach from where, and again, it's because it's organic. So the location of those 13 things kind of just happened organically of who volunteered. It wasn't like someone sat down and said, well, the range for a walkie-talkie is this, and this is where, so it wasn't like that. So now we're coming back and here we are, there's, many years later, there's new technologies. There's, I would like to see us look at what is the actual solution that we should have and then deploy it. And then have it be consistent. And then once we do it once, you can do it everywhere. That's what
I
would
think
see
we were
happen.
counting on the chief and the city manager to do that. And that's why we're doing another drill just next year. Every September, we're going to do another drill. But there was a report that chief, your sergeant put together for us and made some recommendations. And I assume that we're going to see something come to the council with regards to that. Now, the fire district, which is one of the things that you had in there, wishes to support that, we would be more than happy to do that. And if you want to roll it out to other organizations, that would, if it will work here, it should work elsewhere because we have more trees than most people, which affects the communications. But anyway.
Hey, Rick, can I just piggyback on what Diana said? Because I actually participated in that drill and it was fantastic. And I was just trying to think about how we can scale it to the other emergency groups, because it was a very big eye opener for me. And with obviously with the needs, the unique needs from Atherton. But I think a drill just from the communication perspective was very useful and it was excellent. So Diana, thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I mean, it was really a great drill. And I think a lot of people learned what was good and what was bad about, the communication system. I mean, just even as basic as what kind of radio do I have? Ham or FRS. I mean, any just something so basic like that. But it was great. And I'm just wondering if that could be a first step in trying to get all of the jurisdictions to, align with a goal, because I think communication is so important for emergency response, especially at that retail level.
Director McLaughlin and then Director Jones.
Again, just to narrow the focus down to the town, I have a question for Chief McCauley. We've made several references to the cache of materials and communication devices and whatnot. Do you have what you need? Is the inventory complete? How can the district support?
That's a good question. No, we currently have 3 trailers, which are cached. They're deployed around the community. I know ADAPT is looking for at least for a 5th. And then at one time there was a medical trailer, because we are fortunate. We have 4 or 5 doctors on our team where we can actually have a real field hospital. And working with the fire chief, we were still working on that solution to get another resource in that way. And that's something that we would look for as the district possibly to support that. Most of the equipment on our trailers now they're funded by the town. There may be some minor district equipment there, but it's funded by the town. That's another area we would be looking for. And in response to Diana's question about communications, the more we have the drills and the more we look at technology, it still comes back to what we have in place to keep it simple and something that works. What that is FRS radios, probably in a cache situation with the area coordinators. We have ham radio operators, and we're still working on getting the ham antenna here. And I think that's still the plan that works, that would be most usable, keep it easy. Ham radio is a little more technical and you have to have a little more training, but our plan is to have that ham radio within each area or each 2 areas where the FRS can communicate, and then either on foot, runners, bikes, get to the ham radio person that can get back here to the EOC.
Director Jones.
Yes, it kind of digressed just a little bit, picking up on conversation Virginia just had, and I think it might have been Diane that talked about in terms of communication over in our area, and I'm from East Palo Alto, as you know, over the last 6 weeks that our group we have 6 different neighborhoods we have through our FRS radios that everyone have, we have been every Tuesday testing out our FRS radio range and where we can communicate where the dead spots are in the community. And that's been very eye-opening to us. We started out initially getting on the same channel because that's very important. And from what I know that Mobley, John Mobley, along with the communication group at the district, had put together this chart that had allocated different frequencies to all of the to East Palo Alto, to Atherton, and to Menlo Park. So neighborhoods, each neighborhood would have their own frequency. So we've been practicing on just tuning in to one frequency of the 6 that we have. And I think that information, maybe Tom Pressing may have, maybe Tom Owens may have it, because they've been a part of that communication group. So that's a good start in terms of trying to understand the range of the FRS radios and finding where the dead spots are. Yes, that's it.
Speak into the mic, please.
I was going to say something politically incorrect. There is the thing of what's on paper, like what you said, Chief, is the runners. We found ourselves when we were actually out in the field. I was one of the youngest ones there. So, and I don't consider myself being able to run very far. And I was one of the youngest ones. So there's the plan, and then there's the reality.
I was one of the oldest ones. It was really bad.
I was second
And
oldest.
there was a first second.
So this is what we're looking at. My son.
I can't do it.
Right. And I can't do ham radio either. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the best thing I've heard said so far is the idea of organizing the groups and then actually going out and trying everything. Because it's one thing to say we're going to run, it's another when the reality is. It's one thing to say everybody has an FRS and then it comes that they don't reach or they're not plugged in or they're not. So I would see them, they're at the cache like we were saying, and that they're taped to the right channel, and just make it easier and make it consistent and do a best practices. Because I think we've never really tried a lot of it. Even the drills that we do are on the higher level. They're not on the neighborhood level. As far as I know, that was the first time we've done a neighborhood accident drill as opposed to.
Okay, well, I was
everybody
just going to
coming
add
in
something
and
to
doing
what the
they're
chief
doing.
said.
Yeah, and one, the simple response to a lot of the concerns and the issues are, yeah, we have a plan on paper. Emergency happens, you have no idea what's happening. The main message to our residents, and should be to all, you have to be responsible for yourself. I can't say that strongly enough. You have to be responsible for yourself. Hopefully then yourself and your family are safe. Then you start working out to your neighbors. And as we start to get our hands around it, then we will get out. But that's the main message is regardless of what's happening, you have to be taking care of yourself.
Bob and Bill.
I'm not very familiar with most of what we're talking about. I mean, I know what they stand for. I don't know what's supposed to be in a cache. I'm hearing things that kind of surprise me, like Menlo Park has a hospital location, but there's nothing in it. I don't get that. We got radios that we don't know how to work them necessarily, and they're not good enough to get to where they're supposed to be. It seems there's a lot of rebuilding the wheel in each community. Mostly I'm shocked by the fact that the best trained people in the area on any kind of emergency, our fire people, don't seem to be communicating and leading what we're talking about. So trying to get an action item out of this, besides the fact that we need some radios, I guess, it seems obvious to me that the leaders of the three areas, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and Atherton, should be sitting down with our police chief and our fire chief, and maybe a couple other police chiefs along the way, in a small manageable group to put some direction together on this thing, rather than this group that's maybe marginally qualified to even have the discussion, in my case, not qualified at all. And put together some action items, some direction, some standardization of a way to get a hospital that actually has something in it. I mean, that to me is a starting point that I would be a proponent of.
So just quickly to respond to what the council member just mentioned, I will say our board of directors is gathering a community study session together on April 26th to do part of that. And that is to invite all of our community groups from every community that we protect to a study session where we can do some listening and figure out exactly what those areas are that we need to improve in. The other thing that Director Solano was asking, that question about who's in charge. Well, there's a couple different answers to that. If we're talking about in the EOC, it's likely going to be the city or town manager. If it's for the overall incident, it's going to be the two of us in unified command or our designees. And in the case of an earthquake where it's a widespread thing, it's going to, we're going to have a lot of designees and maybe create operational areas, to deal with those things. And we're going to be dependent on the EOCs to support us in our on the ground missions there. So the answer to the question of who's in charge in the EOCs, it's going to be the city managers. On the fire ground, it's going to be law enforcement and fire. And, Mayor, like you said, when you were talking about the premise of ADAPT, of being on your own, I mean, it's a very pragmatic and realistic premise. And I think we all realize that our communities are going to be very much on their own. We're going to be quickly overwhelmed when we're talking about the earthquake, especially, and we're going to be incredibly dependent on our community volunteers and leaders to stand up and do that. So, and I think that's what we're all here for today, is figure out what that is and how we can support it. Part of it's going to be local drills, and part of it with me is just listening. What worked in my last organization doesn't necessarily work here, and listening and hearing that your community needs that engagement in your community so they can be practiced there. And maybe there's a broader countywide thing for our CERT members, we can do that. And then finally, and you'll hear me repeat this over and over again, is we are your fire department, and you should be able to ask us for what your needs are, and we will figure out a way to support you in your community, whether it's ADAPT or an EPA or Menlo Park or in our unincorporated areas. We are your local fire department for each and every one of those communities. So that's what our goal is to do just that.
Great. I've got Chuck, but I just want to alert everyone, we're 5 minutes after 5. We've got a second agenda item, which actually goes to joint agency collaboration opportunities. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
I just wanted to expand on the date that the chief mentioned. We are having a study session, a board study session on April 26th. It's a week from Tuesday from 7 to 9 o'clock. And that's when we hope to hear from these constituent groups and the public in general on what the needs are. And just to second this idea of how this is going to happen, at any one time, there's only roughly 35 professional firefighters on duty. And we're in a community that if it's during the work week, there's 100,000 people in the community and 35 professionals available. I'm not speaking of the police, I'm talking about fire professionals, but paramedics and emergency medical services. That's it. And that's why this volunteer aspect is so essential.
Unfortunately, we're having our housing public meeting on the 26th.
Yeah, but we
So
can
we
ask
can have-
ADAPT to make sure that,
Yeah.
that we'll have people there, but we're going to be tied up with this
Yeah.
public meeting on housing.
You've heard of that.
We'll send the chief.
So
Item 5.
should we turn to the second agenda item? I don't know if staff has.
So again, on Zone Haven, the chief and I have discussed this, and I think from the town perspective, it's what we can do to support the fire department to support Zone Haven. And it all comes back again to residents signing up for, and I'll let you explain what Zone Haven is in more detail. Sign up for Zone Haven, sign up for our notices to get that information and communication out. So we have spoken and had a really good conversation that we are able to assist the fire department, to educate our residents on Zone Haven. And again, the need to sign up in order to get the information.
Sure, and I will turn it over to John to talk a little bit more about Zone Haven, and it's basically our, I think every community has something a little bit different. Reverse 911, it's a proactively, it is a proactive, you have to sign up for it in order to get notifications for evacuations. Incredibly important for us and for our communities. And this whole area here that we're talking about next with Zone Haven, emergency access, is a lot of it is appropriate for our fire marshal to discuss about. Wildfire education, we've been working actively with our communities. I know every time I have an opportunity to talk, that's generally the conversation revolves around a lot of what we're witnessing in California with our change in our climate and our fire season being year round, and fires obviously moving much faster and having much more significant impacts than they have in the past. So the public is highly interested and engaged, and there's things we can proactively do in our community here in Atherton and the others. Part of it's access, part of it's building construction, part of it is working with our residents to harden their homes in advance of fires. Part of it is to have emergency plans in place so that when we have an event, especially in the form of a wildfire, people are ready, they have their plan in place, and they tune into media and evacuate when we ask them. But with that, I will turn it over to our fire marshal to talk a little bit about Zone Haven and allow you to ask him some questions if you have some.
Good evening. I know I've spoken to each of you before about this item and wildfire a little bit, and I know that I'll be in front of you in the next handful of months with the next code adoption process, and I'm sure we'll be addressing wildfire to a degree in there. With Zone Haven came out of the works with CAL FIRE on the coast here and San Mateo County Department of Emergency Management as a evacuation tool. And as that developed, it has actually grown quite large and is being adopted almost statewide with most agencies now. It's pretty impressive to see how it's adapted. But obviously, with knowing where California is at, having an evacuation tool is definitely a necessary need. Over the last 3 years, we've worked with each of the law enforcement agencies and actually had a team collaboration in developing each of the zones based upon topography, geography of the roads, evacuation routes that we were able to look at, and did what made most sense for groupings to be able to evacuate people onto main evacuation routes and get them out safely. Once we developed all of those zones, then I actually spent time with each police agency, and then we were able to specify target areas, whether it was specified, schools, care homes, different government facilities, areas that we could set up for, pet evacuations, large, whether it's horses, et cetera, walking routes, other routes that may not necessarily be a traditional road that we have, because we know that Walsh Road has its own trigger. So we have partners that we work with. And then through that, it is really a resource tool in two methods. One is for the public to be able to sign up and receive notifications when their zone changes a status, whether it's a shelter in place, go into a warning type notification that something is happening, prepare to evacuate and evacuate, or when everything's all over, it's actually safe to return back to home. So those notifications go out. It's connected through the Department of Emergency Management with the county through their notification system, which is actually in a transition period right now with the state of California. So that is one tool. The second tool is actually all the behind the scenes aspect, really, for the police department and the fire department to be able to utilize resources, pre-plan the evacuation. So if an event were to occur, numerous different types of events, it obviously is more than wildfire now. but we can pre-designate the types of resources, routes, and again, a lot of facilities that are in here that the public may not see. And we can actually choose what the public can see so that depending upon the situation that comes about, we can initiate these triggers. And we can also be pre-planned on the number of resources that would be needed at intersections, et cetera. So it's a great tool for us to be able to work out, do training, and that training has actually occurred now on the administrative side with Sergeant John Fong and Commander Dan Larson with the police departments. And so now we're working at how do we do training collaboratively, in being able to simulate these different types of events. So with the community, I think you guys are well aware at Marsh Road, we had a banner hanging up for most of the pandemic in city of Menlo Park on Santa Cruz Avenue. Again, most events weren't happening. So we had a Zone Haven banner up there most of the pandemic. Station 4, we had a banner up there. And then we've taken out numerous ads in the Athertonian, Almanac, and in Menlo, a number of ads to reach out to the community to encourage that signing up. So I believe that we've been able to do a fairly good job of really blanketing the community to sign up for those that want to. And we are now working on a trifold brochure with also a magnet to put on your fridge so that you know your zone. You're going to take a Sharpie, write in your zone and put it on your fridge so that you're well aware of the zone that you're in case you forget. However, your phone's going to work there. So we are working on some initial publications, but then collaborating with our partners on getting this distribution out. There's a lot of different ideas that we have so that people could be aware of their zones. But right now, that's the phase we're in.
Is messages email or text or both?
So that is the messaging comes out on cell phones, and I believe it also does email. It depends on what you as an individual put in and are willing to share and how you want to receive it.
Has anyone signed up?
Yes, I have.
Have you? No? I get SMC alert, but not zoning.
So that's SMC alert
Is it the
is,
same
so
thing?
it is the same thing. So this is a interface
Oh,
that gets
okay.
to.
I was just wondering because, to get 2 times that amount.
Have you sent out notices independent of the SMC alert?
No, we do not.
So it's
So if
essentially
you
the
get the
same thing.
SMC alert, then you're signed up.
Yes.
No, it's San Mateo County SMC alert, like, Granada Road is closed.
Either
in both
traffic or
directions.
weather.
So if you signed up directly with SMC Alert, then you will not have the zone notification. So when you go to Zone Haven, that is what's going to connect you though to your
Just to my
zone
zone.
for notification through your cell phone.
Oh, I like that better because I get random
And
things.
So that was my question is there a Zone Haven sign up?
There is.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
And that'll connect you so you know what zone you're in.
We've asked that you guys bring every banners and any sign up stuff to our Earth Day. That's one of our chat centers. But the question I have is, as a citizen, I can sign up. Can I sign up for smoke alerts? I can get, there's all these different kind of alerts that people can get, just like what she said. And we're confused, like, who are they all coming from? And it would be really amazing as a citizen to have all of it be through one thing.
Right.
And on the Zone Haven one, I don't understand why you need to know a zone if it's going to your phone. It's gotta know. Where this thing is going is super cool, is that it will know your neighborhood, how you routes out. I don't know if that's implemented yet on the citizen side, but it's gonna be amazing when it's all in place.
There's a lot of tools and it's a matter of us utilizing the right tool at the right time. So just because there is pre-done evacuation routes doesn't mean that's the best route at the time of that incident, depending on what's going on. So it's up to us to implement the correct route and the correct information when that time comes. And but to go on the larger aspect of lots of agencies, lots of information, I can't speak to how other government agencies, outside in the information they send. Hopefully the information you're getting should have some sort of a pretext or an aftertext that would indicate who it's coming from. So that, if it's something that you wish to not receive anymore, or at least validate that this is a legitimate resource that you're getting this information from.
So from the citizen, Zone Haven is an exit route.
It is a notification tool for evacuation aspects, which also would include sheltering in place, that is only going to be through the authority of the local law enforcement and fire department.
So you guys control what's on the map. Do we as citizens get to see the map? So if there's
Yes,
fire
there is a
related-
citizen access on that.
And you guys do it locally, and that's how it ends up being specific. 'cause you
Yes.
guys do it locally.
Correct.
You guys, is there any smoke warnings as part of this at all? Yeah.
If we do not have a specific smoke warning that's on there. However, if smoke is entering the area and there's concerns, we could utilize the tool through, again, Department of Emergency Management to put out a message if we feel like it's something necessary, but we really want to be cautious how much messaging we put out so that it, again, we want it to be listened to and not become something that, oh, I got another text again and I'm not going to listen to it.
So I just say, it's obvious that from the Atherton community, the greatest concern in the wildfire area is the Walsh Road Canyon and where the hills are narrower and the roads are steeper and there's lots and lots of tree cover. We have lots of tree cover everywhere, but that's the area that we're the most worried about because of people getting trapped.
So with those areas, so we are looking at what other communities have done in regards to evacuation routes and securing that when it comes to abatements. I will say that overall, we look really good comparatively with that access. I've driven it numerous times, looked at properties, and a lot of the properties I had concerns with have been developed in the last few years, so that the properties are well maintained. So what we're doing is more of now what we've been doing. I think everybody west of the Alameda for the last 5 years has received a postcard that has wildfire education and links to information to help better your property. Of course, everything right now is voluntary, and it's always a fine line when you go from voluntary to mandatory, right? And so that is one of those things that I'm putting together a bunch of information to come to the town of Atherton to see what changes do we want to implement that would aid in those efforts. And I am going to be focusing on that west of Alameda because I believe that is where the state will be heading in the future for this area, because west of Alameda in the rest of the county is wildland urban interface. And so we do need to look at how can we be proactive.
Yeah, so when you came last, and maybe the second time you came to talk about this in our building codes, I asked you, are we in a fire? Should we be mandating, are we in a fire zone, wildfire area? Or should we be implementing these things with the boxes and the air vents into the attic? And you said, if I remember right, that if we mandated, it could affect our insurance rates. Is that still the case?
I believe, yeah, that's it's terminology and stuff. Insurance companies are always looking for something. So I do want to be careful with what we do in terminology. I think we can implement measures as safety aspects because we've been able to do that throughout the state. So I just want to implement measures that we believe are proactive without declaring anything that the state hasn't declared.
Okay, I think that's close to what you said last time. I just wanted to see where we were.
So may I just, so I got a call from a resident the other night telling me that an insurance agent just told him that they've stopped issuing fire insurance in Atherton. And I said, that's crazy. I've got fire insurance. He says, well, I'll go back and I'll verify. So he called me back and he verified. And so I need to follow up on that. This was just 2 nights ago, I think. And
That's interesting. I do get phone calls from insurance companies all the time verifying property and what our zone is. So I do get those, which is why I want to be cautious.
Well, as of, he says that they're not going to write fire insurance for any Atherton property anymore.
Which company was it?
I think he said either Farmers or State Farm.
Oh, that's interesting because I heard someone in Woodside wasn't able to get property insurance and theirs was canceled. but that State Farm actually allowed, I think, yeah, so.
Well, I think Woodside or Patola Valley, I mean, they're having a really hard time.
Major,
They are
yeah.
also
They
in
are
wildlife
really
urban
hard
interface.
And their policies are being canceled as
Canceled.
well.
But
Right, I mean, it's not even a renewal issue,
I
they're
don't even
being
see
canceled.
how they could do that for
They're
Hamilton.
actually in a movie zone there.
Say what?
I said they are actually in.
Exactly, and I can understand that, and I feel very, very sorry for these people. But, so anyway, FYI, I don't know. I said, I've got my insurance, so far I think.
You know, but it expires every.
Yeah, I know, but they just send me a big bill and I just pay it somehow.
I mean, at that point, Elizabeth, it's worth the money, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, in our areas that we have identified as high fire, one, we've said before that this stuff has to be reviewed over people forget. Do you periodically do mailings to that community, or how do we get to our particular community?
So to clarify, we don't have any
High fire.
high fire severity zones in our district. So I want to clarify that. But obviously.
Or the
we-
thing that you just sent to
so-
the Walsh Road.
So that got mailed out to
Yeah,
everybody?
and they
west-
do that
west of the
every year.
Alameda,
What's the,
and that's been occurring, I think, for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
There was a booklet that
Even
was
more,
also sent
even
out.
longer than
Yeah,
that. you guys.
it's been a while.
There was a trifold that, actually, I went and we
Yeah.
canvassed up Walsh
Exactly.
Road one time, just to make sure everybody had received it.
Yeah, it said 5 feet around your.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, and then.
is there anything as a city that we should be doing to help west of the Alameda?
So right now, I think we have the warning siren, we have zone haven for evacuation purposes. The fire district has a weed abatement program that we are aggressive with that and maintaining that, and we work with the homes and development. So right now, everything else is voluntary when it comes to building construction and dealing with combustibles near homes. I will be coming to the town to discuss what is appropriate, if we want to address that, or maybe be more proactive or stronger in our messaging in regards to volunteer aspects. Again, that's something to consider. And I know one of the ugly things that, we brought up, I have actually spoke to one of your planning managers, is in regards to trees. And, I know we love the trees, but there are certain trees that we don't like. And so there is some trees that the county and the state have deemed as hazardous and are encouraging removal. I am actually proposing that we follow that suit of what San Mateo County is saying, hey, these are hazardous trees, because these trees, one, they're not indigenous, but two, they've experienced the greatest amount of loss around these trees. So I think if we can, again, be proactive and identify that and then encourage, the type of species that we would like here, we can do well. So.
We made recommendations, which
Yeah.
trees we don't want to have, like
Eucalyptus.
Yeah,
things like
I
that.
sent
But
a
if there are
list
more,
last
if there are
week.
more, yeah, we'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, your city staff does have that list already, so.
And in terms of interface with
Acacias.
PG&E and their wires and their maintaining their wires, which we know is what caused a lot of the big fires, are we at risk for any of that? Is there anything we as a city should be policing on that front?
I did speak to the town already about that, about encouraging, the PG&E does have management around their wires. But then again, it is up to the homeowners and stuff for what's below that. And, but we're very well manicured over here, so it's not a big issue, but you still have trees that could fall on that. And again, certain types of trees that are an issue. We don't have high wind events here comparatively with that.
Yes.
I don't know.
You can never say
Look at
never.
my
I'm not
patio.
to say that, but that is one of those things that I did address, is that, we could look into, hey, where are those potential areas? When predictable is preventable,
Yeah.
right? So if we have those areas, what can we do? Because the town can actually enact the district and say, hey, we're gonna underground all these wires. And maybe you coordinate that with PG&E, because they are in an undergrounding project, but I'm sure they're addressing that in a lot higher severity areas and priority areas. But the town is able to be proactive in, undergrounding utilities, et cetera, if we see it to be a risk in a certain area. Maybe again, west of Alameda is an area that we want to address first, and then we decide if we want to go further.
I'm way in favor of underground, always have been. But short of that, are there other things like transformers or specific things you guys have identified as risks that we should be aware of?
I have not identified anything that,
One of the things that is helpful, especially with your council, if you have opportunities to legislate through lobbyists or anything through the Public Utilities Commission to force PG&E to underground, I recognize they're probably not going to do it right here because it's low risk, but our biggest risk is going to be from the fire that carries in the open space down. So if they can work on underground up there, it can reduce our risk here.
Yeah, they gave numbers of how many feet they were gonna put, but none of it's anywhere near there. It's their risk, and they're driven by financial concerns, right? So it's not the most logical rollout.
I just want to see if there's any public comment on this week. I noticed now we have 14 participants online.
And I can see,
hadn't been aware of.
yeah, I can see them here. Just a few might be joining my phone that are not following the chat. We've posted some messages, but just in case they are.
Yeah, so if anybody has public comment that is on the phone, you can indicate by clicking the reactions button and raising your hand, or by providing a chat, and Anthony will let us know. I don't see anyone for public comment.
No.
We have another half hour.
Okay. Well, we're moving right along.
We don't have to use that.
We don't have. Just on the insurance, to make sure that lots of us get the sometimes weekly emails from the insurance commissioner's office.
I don't.
That, well, I get them. Yeah, I get them all, and there's been a big issue around insurers denying insurance, particularly for fire due to wildfires.
I thought they were directed, but they had.
And there's a solution that they've implemented. So anyone who has that problem, including an Atherton resident, ought to contact the commissioner's office because they're quite responsive.
Okay.
And they're quite serious about making sure that everyone is insured.
Okay. I'll relay that to my friend.
Yeah, they've directed the insurance company.
Yes, go ahead.
Smoke. You guys get a fire, you enjoy smoke too. And ask
You
that-
mean air quality, air quality? Air
So-
quality.
So in terms of alerts and messaging to people, and this is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's the first time in my life I had an orange day just like a year ago. And our citizens, a lot of them are elderly. If you're a parent like me, I know it's a smoke day because the kids don't go to school. It's just like a snow day. They have snow days now, but there's a lot of elderly that don't know that, and we need to get messaging out, both on what we're talking about, weed abatement, and these messages on here's purple air and all that. But right now, it's kind of different groups are in charge. So kind of I think of fire, I think of you guys as being in charge of smoke, but I don't think you actually are. I think it's air quality and they're different over there. But from a reality, again, what's on paper versus reality, it'd be really useful to have an organized messaging around all of the stuff, including smoke, which is related to what we do. So when you guys go out and hand out those brochures, you're also telling people to sign up for things like purple air and so all of this stuff on the citizen level, because it's now more prevalent and it's going to be more and more prevalent, we kind of on a community level have to maybe beef it up. So it's getting down, the messages are getting down.
So Diana, what meeting were we? Was it just the other meeting with council that we were talking about? The town was going to add another here at the new center. So where else do we have a purple air at the park? From the town's position, we have now, we'll have 2 purple air locators. But then throughout the community, residents can put one in their
They can have it inside their house
homes.
or outside their.
And you can go online and see where they are.
Okay.
Yeah, this becomes relevant because we're about to institute a leaf blower rule that says if the air quality is bad,
Yeah.
But you can't blow your thing. So we've got to figure out how to get this information out.
Yeah.
And if zoning is a flexible tool that's determined on a local level, maybe we can decide, I hear you about not wanting people to pay attention, not going to hear every time it's a purple area, which may be a lot. But that's another conversation that should be had on some level by somebody.
Yeah.
And instead of having it fall into different organizations, because people as a resident, you think of fire and smoke in the same.
Well, I know the town has a new tool, is it Simplicity or something like that? So to me, that's a great tool to be doing messaging like that. Like, oh, you're looking for different alerts, but I think sending that out would be great, because now you can link people to different government agencies to sign up. So
Right there.
there
A
you
little
go.
insert.
Yep. I think that's, I'm signed up on there. It's great.
Can we download this app on our phone?
Mhm.
And so I know the fire district deals with fire, but you guys are experts in smoke. Either are we, so I think one of the issues that we have to face as local agencies is we get the information from the experts in that area, their quality, and then just replicate that information.
Okay.
As best we can. We can't, I don't think we should be implementing our own smoke analysis and putting that out.
You're saying
Right.
echo the messages that are coming. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's coherent, it's all emergency messaging, and we're getting more and more emergencies, so as a community, we need to coordinate that a little better.
Other committee. Okay, that's good.
Any other comments?
Just real briefly, I don't know if you've watched Station 4 take form. They're on
My.
Alameda. Beautiful looking facility. I don't know if you have it already open, but at least, the next. So I hope you're all, we'll get the word out to everyone.
Thank you. It's pretty amazing.
And we have two big public events about to occur here. One is the one Diana mentioned earlier on June 23rd, an Earth Day event in the park. which-
No, April 23rd.
April 23rd, which is going to consume the whole park. The event. And second is a opening for this whole center once the construction zone is gone, June 4th.
Yeah.
June 4th at 11 a.m.
I have one last question before we get off it. When you were talking earlier about structural and what we do going forward, would it make sense to have a person whose job it is just to talk to the three people, the three cities that are the citizen groups? Is that you, or it sounds like you're going up, you're going to the emergency centers and up? Is there a need, maybe even if it's part-time, but is there one person identified whose job it is to talk to the citizen groups, I guess is what I'm trying to say? And if there isn't right now, is that a role that maybe we should use that will help us do all this?
I can,
Who's going to coordinate?
I
all
can,
three?
yeah, I can say with relative assurity that I don't know if we have that specific person, but it sure feels like we need one. And I think we'll probably also hear that on April 26th too, that some of our challenges have been with communications and consistency. And so we'll figure that out internally. But yes, we will ultimately have somebody who's going to be responsible for coordinating with our three groups, and then also figuring out how we also include our unincorporated areas that don't have those groups, because there's a good part of our district population that's not currently in any of those areas.
So I really appreciate your comments about that and your willingness to kind of absorb that. But maybe, Susan, in the interim, since Atherton's ADAPT is pretty organized, right? That maybe you could maybe take a lead in reaching out to the REPAC and the Menlo Ready group to somehow talk to the heads of, get Tom to, take the lead to kind of coordinate that initial meeting.
I worry that we are at a juncture right now.
Yes.
That And now we have a turnover.
Yes.
In that organization.
Yes.
There was a very specific personality that really led it, okay? That person's gone. I don't know what's gonna happen. The other thing's happened is George is gonna open up his center. So we're at a really, and we have
Yes.
new chiefs.
I
So
know,
We're at
yes.
an amazing point where we should be redefining everything, because we have all this new stuff. So whatever we did before is great. Let's learn from that, but we're at a really interesting point to redefine it.
Right, okay.
Well,
And
I actually think that the common point of these 3 or 4 communities, when you count the unincorporated area coming together, is the fire district. That's the special district that ties us together.
okay. Mhm.
And I think that someone from the fire district needs to take that initiative and not put the burden on ADAPT. ADAPT is working to create its own structure. in the
Again,
absence of
right,
a
Tom,
remarkable
yes,
leader.
right, okay.
So.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with your point, but I just want to talk about the psychology of it, because one of the things that's really problematic for a volunteer organization is those feelings of inadequacy. The minute you put some super professional fire district person in there, everybody says, ooh, I can't do that, not me. And it actually demotivates, in my opinion, action from the ground up, from grassroots.
Yeah, it's a good
What
point.
I think we really need is somebody who knows what it means to be a volunteer coordinator.
Uh-huh.
They know how to motivate people. They know how to praise them. They know how to get them together and do social things, make them feel like they're part of something. Unfortunately, one of the things that happens with not all of them, but many of the fire people, when they come in and do the training, they're so good that you walk away and say, oh, I wouldn't dare do that. So I think that those volunteer coordinators, and I've seen them work really well in some communities, Palo Alto especially, where they run these organizations like they're sergeants. And even though the people aren't being paid, if they don't show up, they're out and they bring someone else in, and it really works well. So I think that's a different skill set.
I agree with that, but I think it still needs to be defined. So we still need to get the professionals defining what we need and where it should be, what walkie-talkie should we have, that stuff needs to come from the professionals. And then you're right, because it is like I was talking to Tom Owen in our community. One of the things we want to push out is having community parties. And in the party, you get the neighbors to come and do it. And so it does go down to the citizens, but I think at least at the top, we need to start with people that know what they're talking about and have a cookie cutter of what we're then implementing on the local level.
Well, I suggest that the 2 chiefs and the city managers from each of the organizations, as Bob had suggested earlier, get together and they can hash out some of this. With regards to the communications, again, the chief and the city manager here was working on that. And what we find out and what we have found out should be propagated. We can send that around, but the chief talks to the other chiefs and our chief talks to the other chiefs. So,
To get the 3 city managers together is easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I just want to push back, because I 100% agree with you, Chuck. It shouldn't be at the professional level that the fire organization is, which is a hierarchical level. I understand that. But I also continually am thinking back to what Director Jones said, which is that there needs to be a commonality. And I really don't believe that's going to exist unless there's leadership to make it happen. And I don't think we can just depend on the volunteer organization to somehow miraculously do it. I do think that the fire district could hire someone not from the professional staff, but someone who's exactly the kind of person you're talking about, as could be a contract position, but just somebody that could pull that together with that sensitivity and understanding. That type of person does exist in the world. Maybe not exist in the hierarchical organization, but does exist and can be hired to pull that together. I don't think it's going to happen if there isn't some leadership.
Well,
I just wanted to mention something, just one other thing, and it's not for major discussion, but just to maybe keep in mind, and it was something that I was kind of shocked to realize maybe only 6 months ago. And then, as you've probably all read about the discussions about encryption on police radios and all that and so forth. And I just wanted to say it because you're the council and you'll make decisions about these things. In Menlo Park, we're on the southern border of San Mateo County. And so we have an agreement with Palo Alto, kind of a mutual aid type of agreement with them. And I didn't realize this, but in all this talk about encryption and privacy and so forth, it turns out that the fire district doesn't encrypt, and the fire district can't talk to the Palo Alto police. And it's just an interesting thing. And I've never seen it in print. Nobody talks about it. But the fact that emergency agencies cannot talk to each other, and that turned out to be a huge problem at 9/11 and the coordination in Manhattan with people being unable to speak together. So I don't have a solution. I don't have an answer, but I'm just trying to make you aware of a problem that shocked me. It just had never occurred to me.
It's cross county lines.
Well, it's not just cross county. It's because Palo Alto has encryption and we, well, yes, they do.
Struck down. That's been struck down. They need to get off of it.
It was, yeah,
Federal
there was.
judge told them that they can't use
They
that.
can't do it.
I thought we were required to, wasn't there a whole big?
This is, yeah.
Thank you, Diane.
Chuck, you threw us a curveball there. Anyway, all right. Good meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Really great to meet with you. Glad we've done it. We
Let's
need
talk
to
more.
continue to do it. It's really
I think we should meet in Colette's.